They closed the doors. I think that means we can start if we want. You guys ready for us to start? All right. Everybody having a good conference so far?
Am I turned on? Okay,
I
great.
see a lot of slates. That's good. You guys all got your little devices out, having a good time, taking notes on them maybe?
All right, so we're going to just go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to session 793, working on an agile team with Visual Studio 11 and Team Foundation Server 11. So great to be here with you guys. We've only got 60 minutes. We've got a lot of content to cover. So we're not going to take a lot of Q&A unless we finish drastically early. But Peter and I are making a commitment to go straight from here over to the booth in the exhibition hall, and we'll be there to field questions. So if there's burning topics that we cover that you really want to get more on, follow us over right after, and we'll catch up there. My name's Aaron Bjork. I'm a program manager, and I work on Team Foundation Server. I've been at Microsoft for 9 years. I live in Redmond, so I'm in the Seattle area. In TFS, I work a lot on the project management tools that we build, work items, reporting, and things like that. And basically, you could say all things agile beyond that. I'm joined on stage by my colleague, Peter Provost. So
I'm Peter Provost. I'm currently working in Visual Studio Ultimate. I've been focusing for the last year or two on agile developer tooling and with a particular focus on unit testing. I've been involved in unit testing in TDD for a decade. So those have been my laser focus, but at the same time I would have to say, like Aaron, all things agile are where we like to keep our attention focused.
So our agenda today really focuses on an agile team, and I want to emphasize the word team. We want to take you through what it's like with Visual Studio 11 and Team Foundation Server 11, some of the new features, the new tools that we've added into the products to help you execute as an agile team. And we're going to look at 4 things today. We have 4 specific topics. First, we're going to talk about prioritizing your work. What does that feel like in Team Foundation Server 11? What does it look like? And what are the tools that we have to support you there? Second, we're going to look at planning. What is planning on an agile team? How do you do planning? And how do the new tool sets support your planning cycles? The third is execution. So what does it look like as a day in the life of a dev on the team or a member of the team? Peter's going to write some code for us. We're going to look at how that execution cycle works. And then finally, we're going to talk about responding. And as you know, in Agile, responding to change, if you will, responding to feedback is an important part of the process. So that's sort of quickly our agenda. We're going to use this slide throughout the talk to sort of frame where we're at, so we'll be coming back to it a few times. Before we just jump into the tools and start with demos, I want to turn it over to Peter and let him talk briefly about the Agile Manifesto.
So this is a very interesting time for the Agile development movement. We are currently in the 10th anniversary of the signing of the Agile Manifesto. 10 years ago, a bunch of notables in the process space who had been working in what they were at the time calling lightweight methods, but that doesn't roll off the tongue very well. It doesn't stick in the mind like Agile. Those guys all got together and met in Snowbird, Utah, to try to see if they could come to some consensus, some common ground for what they were doing. And ultimately what came out of that is kind of these 4 principles and 12 practices that all kind of go together to bring it all up. And we've probably all seen this before, and I just want to hit on it real quick. We're now just going to go through them briefly. Generally speaking, a lot of people think that the Agile Manifesto says only the things on the left and not the things on the right, and of course it doesn't. It says, when in conflict, we prefer the things on the left over the things on the right. So we like individuals and interactions. In other words, teams and people working together is more important than specific adherence to particular tools and processes. It's probably interesting for you to hear me being such an advocate for that as a tools vendor, as a guy who writes tools and who's standing up here talking about processes. But in fact, what it really comes down to is making sure your teams are collaborating and communicating, and we care about the people, because the people are the ones who build the software. Working software over comprehensive documentation. This is the one that often gets people in trouble when they hear Agile's just cowboy, we don't do documentation, we don't do specs. It's actually not true at all. We do a fair amount of that kind of thing. But the measure of success is working software. You can produce all the paper you want, all the 3-ring binders, all the specs, all the UML diagrams that you want. The measure of success is working software. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Now, contract negotiation, you might think, oh, I'm not in consulting, I'm in internal IT, it doesn't really apply to me. No, it does, because you're always negotiating a contract between your team and your product owner, your executive management, your customers, your stakeholders. But what we care about more is having a rich dialogue with that customer, understanding what they want, what they need, what we can do to add value to them, to add business value to the environment in which we reside. And of course, responding to change. Agile is all about responding to change. The first XP book had it in its title, Over Following a Plan. Planning is important. Following a plan, saying that that plan is the only way we're going to get done is crazy. The environment changes, the world changes, the technology changes, as you guys have seen this week. And we need to be adaptable, we need to be evolving, we need to be responding to it. We need to be moving forward and taking advantage of everything that comes at us, taking advantage of it, reacting to it, making sure that we hit all those others and deliver working software that delights our customers with a great team of people.
All right, thanks, Peter. Before we jump into the first topic, I noticed we're kind of piling up by the door there. So we do have some empty seats. If you have an empty seat next to you, we just raise your hand so the folks in the back can come see. Feel free to, we'll just take a moment.
Come on in, find a seat.
Flood on in if you want to come in and find a seat.
I see there's a couple over here. Got some great ones down front.
You can look right up
Come on
our
down
noses
front, you can
if
join us up here.
All right, great. So topic number one is prioritizing. As we know, when we're working on an Agile team, we work in priority order. This is critical. It's important because we want to make sure that we're delivering value, and we want to deliver maximum value to our customers. And so in order to do that, we make sure that we're always working from a groomed backlog, known as the product backlog, and it's always in priority order. So this would represent an example of what a product backlog might look like. Each of these could represent a user story that's on your backlog, a bug that's on your backlog. I don't really care what you call them, as long as they're ranked in priority order. Your product owner's doing that. And they're also been estimated and looked at by the team. So you'll notice that I have some ranges on here, and those numbers represent the amount of effort that the team has estimated each of these items. Now, as a new item is added to the backlog, it's the job of the product owner to put it in the appropriate spot on the backlog. In other words, we're going to move it up and down to make sure it's ordered correctly. This is critical. We want to make sure that we're maximizing our return of investment from our team. And that means making sure that we're working on the highest value user stories or PBIs always. So we're always working in priority order. This is critical. Then for each of these items on the backlog, we're going to make sure that we've had a clear definition of what done means for each of them. And we're going to do that by writing acceptance criteria for each of them. So acceptance criteria is a simple concept where you, for each story on your backlog, you essentially write what the user will be able to do once that story is completed. So I can search for this, I can do this, I can pay that. That's the job of the product owner. And again, it's an important part of grooming the backlog. So right now we're going to jump in and take a look at what that experience looks like in Team Foundation Server 11. So I'm going to switch over to
Wolf.
Number 6 here. And let's take a look. So I think we've seen this maybe a few times in some of the keynotes, and you guys have had a look at it. Maybe you've swung by the booth. But the first question is, what are we looking at here? This is Team Foundation Server 11. You might not recognize it. It might look a little bit different. We're not inside Visual Studio. This isn't Team Explorer. This is a web-based product. How many of you have signed up for the TFS preview? Got that? Great. When you do that, this is the experience you'll get. So you have an account on Azure where you can go get this experience today. And I'd encourage you to do it. But it still has the traditional elements of Team Foundation Server. You'll notice that we've got a hub right over here on the right-hand side called Builds. You can manage our build definitions right here through the web. Our source code is still there, right? I'm not going to drill into these, but we've still got source code. It's still TFS. And we've still got work items. You can write work item queries. You can create new work items, all those kinds of things right there. So this is still TFS, but it looks a little different. The web access side of the product has been completely rewritten in this release. It's an MVC-based app now. It's really, really fast. So hopefully that'll excite you. And it's really built for teams.
Fast is good. We like fast.
We're going to spend most of our time when we talk today in the two hubs second over from the home, which are called the backlog and the board. And we're going to take you through those sort of in detail and explain how those work. So for starters, we are on the backlog. And let me just kind of walk you through what this is. You'll notice that on the left-hand side, we have some items that we can select on the backlog, and we have selected our product backlog. So over here is that prioritized list. It's exactly what I was showing you in the slides before. Each one of these items is a PBI, or a product backlog item. You can notice I can open it up. We've got the title here. I can change things just like I've always been able to do in TFS.
Did you see how fast that opened? Right?
We've got
Fast is good.
the acceptance criteria. We've got links, all the normal stuff that we've got in TFS. Okay, so these are work items. Now, one of the things that I want to highlight is these are PBIs and bugs. You'll notice that I'm adding one of two things when I look at the product backlog here, PBIs or bugs. That's because we're using our Scrum process template. Okay? In TFS, we have 3 process templates. We have an Agile template, we have a CMMI template, and we have a new Scrum template that we released last summer. All 3 of those templates will ship with Team Foundation Server 11. So our Scrum template will ship in the box, just right alongside the other ones. All of these features that I'm showing you here today work for all 3 of those templates. So I'm going to show you the Scrum template, but if you're using the Agile template, if you're using the CMMI template, you get this exact same experience. It's just different terminology. You'll see requirements there if you're using CMMI. If you're using Agile, you'll see user stories. If you have a custom process template, a third-party process template, if you've got one called foobar, all of this works. And it's all easily configurable on top of those processes. So I want to highlight that. This is not specific to a process. This is not specific to a process template. This is TFS. So you get this out of the box with all your projects. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's say that we find something on our backlog, and we say that we think it's a higher priority. So we've got an item here called the new order wizard broken down into steps. As the product owner, I think this is a higher priority item. So in past, what I might do is I might open that up and change the value on it and refresh and watch it move up to the top. In Team Foundation Server 11, I'm going to drag it and I'm going to drop it right at the top of the list. Very, very easy. So this is one of the big improvements that we've made to the product here. Now, once we've done that, we might say, you know what, I think that this particular item is important in an upcoming sprint. As the product owner, my job is to set the priority. I'm not going to make a commitment for the team here. But to do a little bit of release planning, I might say, I think we might want to work on this in our next sprint. So how do I go ahead and assign this to the next upcoming sprint? Well, you'll notice that Sprint 3 represents our current sprint. And we've got some other items here. We've got Sprint 4, Sprint 5, and Sprint 6. I can simply drag and drop this guy over to Sprint 4. And when we've done that, you'll notice that the iteration path was automatically set for us. So we set the iteration path there directly to Sprint 4. So some nice, easy gestures for sort of dragging and dropping and making quick decisions about your backlog. All right. Now, you might be wondering, on the left-hand side, how does it know what's past, current, and future?
Yeah, I was about to ask you that. I see the current sprint, and I'm like...
Okay, so that's the reason that we know that is because we now have dates on iterations in the product. So feel free to clap. We've been waiting 3 releases for that, and we finally got there. So every iteration node has a start date and an end date. You can go up and set those. And now that we've got that, we can automatically set those start and end dates on the out-of-the-box reports that we ship. We can do some nice things with iterations here and automatically understand what the current sprint is. And we'll show you in a little bit how we can build burn-down charts and things like that automatically. So that's a great new feature. Okay, so what does it look like then to add something to the product backlog? So you might have noticed this little panel right at the top here. We call this our add panel. You can turn it on and you can turn it off. Oops, I clicked hierarchy there, but you can turn on the add panel on and off. This is just an easy way to add something to the product backlog. So in the past, adding a new work item to the backlog was an experience that was more like this. I would click the new work item button. I would find, in my list of work items what was important to me. I might find my PBI. Then I'm presented with a screen like this, and I would fill it out and click Save, refresh my query. You know the drill if you've used TFS before. Now that experience, what we've done is we've added a very quick add experience right here to the top of the backlog. So I can just say, as a presenter, I want a cool tablet. You might not know this, but none of us got the cool devices that you guys got. So that's an important user story for me. So I want to add that to the top of the list.
I don't think putting it. Yeah, I don't think putting it on the backlog is going to get you one.
Yeah, I don't think it is either, but I can try. So, so I've added that there, and you'll notice it added at the top because I'm at the top. Now I can move this down again. Okay, maybe this isn't as important, so I'm going to move it down in my list. And see what happens there. So we'll just move that down, and for some reason it doesn't want to move down. It's important.
Yes.
Well, you know, these things happen. So we'll come back to that and talk about how cool it is, though, that I can actually move that down in the backlog. Other things I can do is you'll notice if I add in here, I'm going to say add something else here. I can do that. It automatically adds where your cursor location is. So again, very, very simple and very, very easy to do. The other thing I want to highlight, too, is that you'll notice that I'm running IE here, but this works in all modern browsers. So Chrome, Firefox, we don't care what you're using. This is going to work. All right, great. So we've seen that we can quickly prioritize things when that works. I'm not sure why that's not working right now. We'll come back to that. We can quickly add things to the backlog, and we can also quickly assign things to sprints. So some very, very easy gestures here for your product owner to make great decisions.
So Aaron, a quick question. I know I've done this a lot in the past. I'm a product owner for my team. The way we've done this, as you said, I open them up and I go and I play with that stack rank field. And so I go by like tens or hundreds, so I always leave myself room for insertion.
Right.
I don't see that field here.
Yeah, so it's a great question. What we've done is we've actually removed that field from the form because it's really not important anymore. So we want you to essentially let go of that field. If you've had used the stack rank field before and you do some crazy numbering schemes with that, you can certainly add it back in here if it's important to you. But we don't feel like that field is important. We're going to let TFS take care of priority and let you use the tools here to manipulate that.
So I just put it where I want it.
You put it where you want it. That's
Excellent.
Exactly right. So very, very easy. Okay, now quickly before I move on, I'm going to show you, you might have noticed there's some other things kind of hanging out on this screen. What's this? So this is a velocity chart. What's that little image up at the top? This is just a nice little chart that shows for your particular team how much effort the team has completed over the course of the past sprints. So you'll notice in sprint 1, we completed 35 units of effort. In sprint 2, 42 units of effort. And in sprint 3 here, we've got 18 units of effort that are already done and 23 still in progress. So it's a quick, nice little velocity chart. These charts that I'll show you are built directly off the operational store, so they're not cube-based, so they refresh instantly. And I'll show you how that works here in a second. So that is our product backlog. We've got some other great features here that I'm not going to jump in and sort of highlight because we don't have a lot of time, but you can manipulate hierarchy and do all kinds of additional things here. Really, really powerful experience. So that is how we prioritize work in Team Foundation Server 11. All right, so let's switch back to slides. And let's talk about what's next. Let's talk about planning. So what does the planning process look like as we move out of our prioritized backlog into a sprint or an iteration? What does that look like? So it starts with the product backlog again. Again, we're always working in priority order. That's very, very important. And as a product owner, if you're working on a Scrum team, your product owner is going to bring that backlog to your sprint planning meeting. They're going to have it well-groomed, and they're going to have those items that maybe they've assigned to the upcoming sprint ready for you to talk about. And the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to re-estimate them. And you'll probably use some technique. Planning poker is a very, very common one. But you want to go and estimate those items again. So how many of you out there are using planning poker today? Folks that use planning? Great, it's common. So Peter, does your team use planning poker?
Yeah, we do. We use it a fair amount. Every time I go to one of these conferences, I always make sure to get as many of those little decks that I can. You guys have seen those with the Fibonacci sequence on them. And yeah, the teams will sit around and everybody will get their little deck out and be ready. As the product owner, I talk about a story and what I want to get done, and they all start fiddling through their cards. For those of you who aren't familiar with planning poker, the idea here is to encourage a rich conversation about an estimate instead of either the project manager or somebody else kind of imposing one on them. And so, the team will all do it, and they'll all pull out their cards, and we say, 3, 2, 1, go. We hold up our numbers. And, just the other day, we were doing one of these, and of course, one of the guys had a 3, and one of the other guys had a 4, and one of the other guys had a 20. And, in fact, that, to me, is the point of planning poker. 3, 5, 20. There's a conversation that needs to happen here. And so, of course, what do we say? We turn to the guy who's got 20, and we say, what? As we had a conversation with him, we realized very quickly that he was thinking about a couple of other interesting angles that we hadn't considered. and that I hadn't actually described as the product owner. But he was right. And so I said, yes, actually, no, that's good. I think the story does need to change that way. I edited the acceptance criteria, adjusted the story a little bit. We had a really good conversation. Suddenly the other guys came up to numbers approaching 20. Right? We found a common ground that it was bigger than we thought. It wasn't 3 or 5. And the idea of planning poker is to encourage that conversation and to encourage kind of a consensus of the team agreeing, this is what it is, this is how we're going to do it, this is how complex it is, and this is what it is that we're going to go and get done.
Valuable tool. So, and when you're doing this, make sure you're doing it with the whole team. This isn't your product owner and your dev lead, for example.
Oh, I hold up cards too.
Yeah, the whole team.
They don't often like mine. One.
All right, so what do? So after we play planning poker, we re-estimate. So we see maybe something that's a 3 goes to a 5, right? We reach consensus on that. We're agreeing on scope. We're agreeing on what done looks like. And now we're going to go start and pull those items into the sprint. And the team's going to start to decompose them. And we decompose them into a list of tasks that represent the real work, right? So each of these stories turns into a task or a set of tasks. And those tasks, again, are, adding the stored procedures, testing the database tables, actually writing the code, the implementation. And this is very, very important. Now, when you go through this process, one of the things that often happens is something that you've estimated, you realize, you know what, it's a little bit too big. It's bigger than we thought. And again, this is where more of those rich conversations are happening. So the idea here is you take that item, you negotiate with your product owner, we throw it back on the backlog. It goes right back to where it was, so it likely stays on top. And we'll spend some time decomposing that, maybe pulling it into a future sprint, or maybe turning it into 2 smaller stories later. But what we're going to do is find something else that fits. So we're going to work with our product owner, figure out what is next in terms of priority, and pull that into the sprint and do that. So after that, finally, the team is going to use that data to help make a strong commitment. And what I want to do now is show you some of the tools that we've added into Team Foundation Server 11 for helping you do this planning and then making that commitment. So let's go take a look. So we'll switch back over to web access. And again, you'll notice I'm still on my product backlog, and we've been dragging and dropping things over into Sprint 3. Now, in this particular scenario, we're having to sort of fake things a little bit. So Peter and I are going to take you through the life cycle of an Agile team, but we're halfway through our sprint already. Okay, so I've got a pre-populated sprint already going here. So I'm going to jump into Sprint 3, and you'll notice that we've already got a set of user stories here, product backlog items, and we've got a set of tasks. You'll also notice that we've got a burn down chart. So we're actually already in progress. So we've done that ahead of time. So what are we looking at here? Well, what we're looking at is this is the backlog for Sprint 3. You'll notice that we've selected it over here. Over on the right-hand side now, we've got our list of user stories or PBIs or requirements, depending on your process template. We've got them pulled over here, and you can see the tasks below each one. So if I were to open up one of these, we've got a task called Review the Design with Stakeholders. It's assigned to Annie, and this one's actually already done. So great. Now let me describe some of the other things that you're seeing on the screen. First of all, you'll notice on the right-hand side, we've got these little pane. We call this our capacity pane, and we're seeing some bits of information over there. So what is that? Well, I'm going to actually start you from this bit over here at the top. This work 26 of 28 hours, that represents the amount of capacity the team has left in the sprint, and then the green bar represents the amount of work. So you can see we've got 26 hours of work planned for the rest of the sprint, and we've got 28 hours of capacity. So we're doing okay there. So you might be wondering right off the bat there, well, where'd those numbers come from? How did you understand capacity? Well, let me show you. I'm going to bounce into my little capacity pane over here, or my capacity view. And you'll notice that we've got each member of our team here, and we've got an available capacity. So this is a new feature in TFS. We've got the concept of team right built into Team Foundation Server. So imagine that.
So we have time and team
it's
now.
Good. Our team here is made up of 5 of us: Aaron, Annie, Brian, Julia, and Peter. And you can see that for each of us, we've got how many hours a day that we work on the project. So you can see I've got a little bit of a problem because I'm not doing too much work. So I could add some capacity in. Sounds about right. But watch what happens. When I add in 2 hours of work, you'll notice things change. So if I work 20 hours a day, right? I'm Brian Harry. Okay, I'm not Brian Harry, but I work really hard, right? And you'll see those numbers changing. This is helping build out this capacity bucket for us. Now, Peter, I know, works really hard, so we'll give him 10 hours a day. You can see as we do this, things start to change. So the idea here is that we're using this capacity and the amount of time remaining in the sprint to figure out how big's our bucket, right? How can we do this? And that's building out this bar here. What we also do is we factor in days off or vacation days and things like that, interruptions. So you can come in here and say, you know what, I'm taking the day off tomorrow, and come in and it'll subtract that from your available capacity as well. So I'm not going to futz too much with that, but I just wanted to show you that, how you can build out that capacity. The other thing that I want to show you is you'll notice that we've got this, which is the capacity for the team up here at the top. Then we've got it down here by individual. Well, you might be wondering, how about by discipline, right? How do you do this? So how many of you guys do planning by discipline? By development, testing, things like that? Great. It's a very common practice. So we might come in and say, you know, Brian Keller, he does mostly testing work. Julia does mostly testing work. We'll say Peter is our dev, and Annie does dev work as well. Now you'll notice, I'm going to save those changes. As I added that, we got a few new buckets that showed up here, up at the top. Those buckets represent the amount of capacity we have for each development activity or each activity. So now we've got another way that we can sort of slice and dice our sprint plan. Now you'll notice that not a lot of it is filled up, right? Well, why is that? That's because none of our tasks are assigned down here. So most of the teams that Peter and I work on, we don't assign all of the work up front. We do planning by capacity or by development activity, and then individuals grab items during the sprint as time allows, right? But we don't do upfront assignment of all the work. If you do, however, we're going to support that. So let me show you how that works. Let's say I could come in and I say, add URLs to the customer list. Let's go ahead and assign this to Annie. Now, when we do that, you'll notice our development bar starts to fill up, and Annie's bar starts to fill up. We could grab another one, add automated tests. Now, I know this is not a development task, but we'll just go ahead and assign it to Annie as well. And you'll notice things start to change again. Now you'll notice we've got a problem. Annie's got more work assigned to her for the rest of the sprint than she's got available capacity. So I like to think of this view as it's an awesome planning view, because as your team's decomposing the work, you're essentially using the screen, and as long as you're seeing green, you're feeling good. As soon as you start to see these other colors float in there, you know you might have a problem, and you're going to want to go in and adjust. So you can use this for sprint planning. You can also use this throughout the sprint to help you load balance and whatnot as the sprint continues. And the other thing I wanted to highlight here is if you don't plan up front, so if you don't do this assignment, you can actually just jump into the tasks and assign the tasks activities. So let's do that same thing. We'll say that's a development task. You save and close that. And this one is, let's say this is a test task. And you'll notice we get the same buckets, but now we don't get the data down here.
So for teams who aren't assigning to people,
that's right.
This lets me kind of just figure out how much of my pile is the various activities.
So it's kind of like a bar. If you assign all your work up front by people, you're going to use all three of these panes. If you only assign by activity type, you're going to sort of ignore the bottom one and only use the one up here at the top. And if you don't do any assignment and any sort of breakdown by activity, you've still got this nice bar up here. So it's very sort of stretch to fit. You can use it as you see fit. And we've also, if you just aren't interested, you can come in and just turn this off as well. So we've got some features there as well, and I know a lot of you guys like to do that. Okay, so we're going to use this tool to do sprint planning. We've also got easy ways to add new tasks. So I'm going to come in here and say, you know, this is a new task. You'll see I'm going to add some remaining work, save and close. When I do that, automatically adds it in, creates the parent-child relationship. You can see we're overcommitted now, but you get the idea. Okay, so quick sprint planning. Now, before I move on into the next section, I want to take you over to what does this look like once we start executing, right? What does this view look like to the team as they're moving through the iteration or through the sprint? So let's go over to the board. So I clicked on the board up here at the top. The board is our new task board in Team Foundation Server, and it's always tied to your current sprint. So let's kind of examine it a little bit. What do we see? We're seeing those exact same PBIs and stories that we saw in the other view. But instead of the PBIs at the top with the tasks beneath it, we've now got those items on the left side, and these are those same tasks. So you'll notice I've got this task. This is a new task, which I just added. And it's here, right, assigned to add customer website URLs to the customer list, to this story. I could also add new tasks here, so add another. Again, very, very easy to do. And I get these great tiles. Now I can take these tiles, these cards, and I can move them over as progress happens. So again, drag and drop gestures, very, very easy to manipulate. And when I do that, I'll just kind of show you. There's no magic going on here. You'll see that it's telling me I changed the state from to do to in progress less than a minute ago. This is writing directly back to TFS, and it's live. And it's very, very fast. And if you imagine, this is one of these places where we say we're trying to bring a little fun to the product, a little fun to TFS. In the past, you had to, kind of yell at your team to open up the tasks, go find the tasks, first of all. Then they have to open them up. Then they have to come in here, and they have to do these state transitions. And it's difficult, right? It's not fun. This is fun. This is also built to be 100% touch-enabled. So if you've got the big monitors, if you make a lot of money and you've got one hanging at home, you can have your own Scrum board, and you can be walking up and back and forth and doing all that kind of stuff, So it's pretty cool. Drag and drop works here. We get a lot of people that ask us if Connect is hooked up to this. It's not yet hooked up, so just going to make that clear. We'll see. Yeah, I think I'm a little nervous after that.
I think next time we'll have to bring a Connect.
Add it to my car before
we'll
they
bring
add
a
it to my
Connect next time, and I'll just stand up here and move them.
Now, another couple things I want to show you. As I drag them to done, something to done, you'll notice that it automatically decremented the hours. Our Scrum process template does this for you, and so it supports all the natural work item rules. If I grabbed something back and said, hey, I'm going to move this back from done to in progress, it's an odd thing to do, you'll notice we get an error. So what's going on there? Well, this is a work item validation rule. The template states that you've got to have remaining work to be in progress, so we simply correct that and add it in there. So again, very, very simple. This works with any process. Out of the box, you get this 3-state process for the Scrum template. If you're using the CMMI template, you'll get the 4-state process: proposed, active, resolved, closed, I believe. If you want a 12-state process, go for it. You're going to need to buy some really widescreen monitors, but go for it. Okay, a couple other quick features. The burn down chart. This is a live burn down chart. I'm going to have you watch as I'm moving things over. You'll notice that the burn down chart is actually moving. I don't know if you guys can see that, but watch it carefully when I let go. You see it tick down?
The tail of it's ticking down. We've
it's
got
subtle, right?
We got too much work here, but the tail of it was ticking down. Right?
Yeah, but this is great because this is a live burn down chart. There's no waiting for the cube to update, right? You're doing this in stand-up, you know if you're on track. So really, really powerful. Great stuff there. And then a couple other things. We've got some great pivots here. I can also view the work by team member. So this is a different pivot where instead of stories down the left, I'm just looking at team members down the left-hand side. So that's easy to do. And we also got a stand-up view, which is built for this nice little filtering. So I could come up and say, I don't have any tasks, but I could do Julia. You'll notice what it did is it automatically collapsed the stories where Julia doesn't have any assigned work. It grayed out anything not assigned to her. And now it actually highlights only the work that is on her plate. So again, if you can imagine a stand-up environment, this is a great, great feature where everybody just walks up, sets the filter, moves their items over. Very, very easy. Very, very quick. So that's our new task board. Always mapped to the current sprint. And again, you've got your dates on iterations. So I'm going to jump back. And now we are going to sort of transition out of looking at that to what does it actually look like now to execute on this sprint. So what's that going to look like? And I'm going to turn it over to Peter, who's going to walk us through that.
Right, so here we are now. We were gonna drag some stuff around here. We'll come back to that in just a second. So when the development team starts talking about picking up work, right, they're gonna, in addition to thinking about the task board and thinking about TFS, they're thinking about code. They're thinking about features. Thinking about executing and building up. So they take one of these stories, they take these product backlog items, they take these tasks, and start thinking about how am I going to write the code for that. And there's a lot of techniques that Agile teams like to use. You heard me when we were first starting out and I was giving out books asking about TDD and unit testing. There's a reason that we like TDD and unit testing, and it's because it helps us have a good, solid foundation for supporting the code that we're building and for being able to embrace change when that comes through the business environment. New changes to stories, changes to capabilities. Having all those unit tests and all that support lets us do that because we don't have to question, is this change going to break something? Well, I can run my tests and I can go green and find out. So let's kind of take a look at what that looks like, right? There's a pattern that you'll hear described in the Agile community called red-green refactor. This is really the TDD loop, okay? And how does that look? It's actually quite simple. You write a test. That test fails, and so we use red as an indicator, fail. Then you write some code. Then you run your test, and it's green. All right, one step done. It's a baby step kind of approach. So then I write another test. I write some code. I see it go green. I write another test. I write some code. I see it go green. We just keep doing this over and over again. Now, there comes a period of time where we look at the code we've written and we say, yeah, I probably need to do a little cleanup here. So we do some refactoring. We squish some of that code together. Get rid of duplication, collapse things down, get it clean, run our tests again and say, okay, see, we didn't break anything. This is that tests providing us the infrastructure to know we are good. So then I write another test, and I write some more code, and I continue doing this over and over and over, always thinking back to the task, always thinking back to the story, to the acceptance criteria, to get it all built up. So let's take a look at how we're going to do this. 1, 4, 6. Okay, so of course, I'm a dev, so that means I'm going to start here at stand-up, and I'm going to claim this task. So what I do is, as Aaron mentioned before, we're in stand-up mode, so I'm going to convert this thing over to my view, and so we're standing here at stand-up, and I say, okay, well, I'm going to grab that task. So I'll pop this guy open, I'll grab that, and I'll drag it over. Now, notice that because the filter view was set to me, as I dragged that and dropped it to in progress, it also assigned it to me. I don't have to do anything now to have that become mine. It's mine, it's good to go. And we can imagine that if I was using the My Work pane, the new My Work pane, and Aaron, when is that talk?
So Jamie Cool is giving a talk tomorrow morning, I believe, and he's going to go through our dev collaboration scenarios where he's going to talk about My Work, and he's going to show you exactly this, which is after you've dragged something to yourself in stand-up, where does that then show up inside Visual Studio? And he's going to walk you through that.
All right, so I go to my Work pane, there it is, I can use it, and I can get started. So let's get started. Here he is. I've claimed I'm working on this task. So let me show you this app that we're going to be playing around with. So Aaron, you're my product owner. I'm the dev here. So our app here is a customer management thing. It's not the prettiest thing in the world. This is for purposes of discussion. And what the story calls for me to do is to add the customer URL and a website link to this list. So I think what you want is the URLs over here?
That's right. Yeah, that's the way we described it.
Okay, and should they be clickable?
Clickable. That's great.
Clickable URLs over here. Okay, so simple little app like that. Let's now get into the code and talk about how we're going to get this done. Now, this code already has a rich unit test harness in place because we have been executing in this manner from the beginning. And what I want to point out is over here on the left-hand side, our new Unit Test Explorer window. This is a new experience that we've built into Visual Studio, which is a developer-focused unit testing experience. It lets you use any unit testing framework that you want. And let me demonstrate that by opening up one of these tests and showing to you these are xunit.net tests. And I'm using a prototype plugin for the developer preview of Visual Studio 11 that was written by the XUnit team that they're going to be making available soon. So we now can talk about XUnit, NUnit, MBUnit, whatever framework you want while developing these. So I'm going to go ahead and use xunit.net here today. But of course, as an agile guy, the way I like to start is by knowing that I'm green. Like I'm not allowed to do anything until I'm green. So let's run all of our tests. Did you see how fast those ran? We are lightning fast. Speed, as Jason mentioned the other day, speed and scalability are very important to us. We want to not ever be in your way as a developer who's building and writing tests. Now, what I need to do is I need to get that URL showing up in our system.
Now, Peter, before you do that, you told us you were green. How do we know? Do I have to search through here to know that I'm green every time?
No, I got this nice green bar at the top.
Okay, so tell us how that works then.
Red, green bar, right. So let me just make a test fail. I'll show you. All right. We've received a lot of feedback that people want those nice, clear indicators of success and failure. They want a red, green bar. So you're going to watch as I run this, the bar will count across green, and as soon as we hit a failing test, the bar turns red. This is what people have been asking for forever. Simple feature. Now you know as a dev exactly what's going on. Red. So let me take that back out because I'm not happy working with red. Red is not a happy place for me. Okay, green, I feel good now. Okay, so I'm using a pattern in this WPF application called Model View View Model, MVVM. This allows me to separate logic from UI. It's a good pattern, and you'll find that when you do TDD and unit testing a lot, that you'll use those kinds of patterns frequently. Separate things out, isolate them, make them easy to test. It has the added benefit of being nicely decoupled from a design perspective. So the first thing I need to do to get a new piece of data onto my view is to put it into my view model. Now I have some tests here for my view model, my customer list view model tests, and we're going to start in typical TDD fashion by writing a new test. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to confirm that I can force the website into the view model. Okay? So if we take a look, I'm using a fake customer repository object here. This allows me to not actually bind to real databases and services. And this fake one already contains a URL website in it. So I'm just going to confirm that it does show up in the view model before I start. Too many T's. Fabricam.com should be in the first customer view model I get back, .website. It looks like perhaps a previous team may have done a little bit too much work, but that does happen sometimes, where you go a little bit beyond what your test requires and start doing too much. Okay, so it didn't show up. I'm wondering. So I did mention that I was using a prototype xunit.net adapter. And I suspect, all right. So, which test failed? Let's take a look at what we have here in the Unit Test Explorer. We have a full stack trace right here on the screen. I can click the stack trace link and go right to the line of code. That's the one that's failing. That's what we expected to see fail. Let's go ahead and take a look at our customer view model. And what we're going to see there, the repository copies in. We need to, which test is failing here? You know, I was going to say, I think I missed. This is called writing a bad test as opposed to writing bad code. But we got great people in the audience who help catch these kinds of mistakes. Green light, go. Okay. So now I know that I've at least moved that piece of data into the view model. Now, Aaron, you said you want it to be clickable.
That's right. That's what the customers told us they wanted.
Customers said they want it to be clickable. Okay, so again, using WPF and the MVVM pattern, what we like to do when we have interactivity like that is to use a thing called the command pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a test now. Now I've helped myself out here with a little bit of helper code here. We need to have a test that's going to confirm that we have that command object on our view model. So we'll just bust one out here real quick. Click, website, command, implements iCommand. So that'll just force us to actually write the code. Because, of course, red-green refactor can't write any production code until I'm red. So I'll just steal some code up here, because as we've been discussing all week, copy-paste is the manner of code reuse that everybody uses. And we will just confirm that we've got an is assignable from iCommand, and it is the system under test, and I don't think we have a command object here yet, so let's say click command, or website click command. Okay, so we're good to go. We'll build. Our new test should show up in the system. I think I have to have a word with Brad Wilson from the xunit.net team. Okay, so this doesn't exist. We're not even getting successful compile. Okay, so we've got to implement that guy. Let's go ahead and generate a property stub for it. Simplest thing that could possibly work. Okay. All right, so our command did not show up properly. Okay, we're fine. That's because we didn't implement the code for it. Let's go take a look at what we ended up with over there. We ended up with an open property. So I'm going to now grab a little snippet helper here and put in what really should be here. So we've got our initial command. Drop it in there. There we go. So let's talk about what this is. In model view model speak, we often find ourselves wanting to test commands. Commands are one of the primary interaction mechanisms. I'm using a thing called relay command. There was a white paper put out by Patterns and Practices that provided one of the initial implementations of this. And it's just a simple command implementation that lets me pass a delegate that says what we should do. So I'm just going to confirm then that I get back one of these, and I can later talk about how I would test the implementation of that. And we can see that this relay command is going to take on its constructor a lambda, which results to a delegate, which is going to just say, call process.start on the URL. Okay, because we're going to pass that URL through a command parameter. Okay, we're good to go there. Let's build this thing up. And let's make sure that our tests are happy now. All right, so our tests are green. So we used that test, the test that forced us to write the I command, to have us bring in the implementation. But we still don't have this thing hooked up to the view yet. So let's go ahead and talk about how we might do that. So again, in MVVM, we do a lot of data binding to make this kind of thing happen. And data binding code lives up in the XAML, and we generally don't test that. And that's actually fine. So let's go take a look in here. And what I'm going to do is, again, drag in a snippet because I'm not the speediest XAML typer in the world. And I have one over here. Excellent. If we take a look at what this has really done, and I will open this up so we can see it. All right, so here I've created a button. I've set its style so that it looks like a hyperlink. It's just a style that I picked up elsewhere. But the important bit here is this command, which is a nasty long binding string. Pretty well documented in the MSDN, actually, about what you do here. This is a repeating list. And when you do a repeating list, you have to reach up to get to the view model. Not really a big deal. And then at the very end over here, you can see we're passing in the website property from the view model. So that way that command, remember, it took the param. I was going to call process.start. It's just a URL. Process.start will cause Windows to pop that thing up in a browser. All right, let's build this thing up. I'm going to have to talk to Brad, because you guys notice I'm having to rebuild in order to get discovery on the unit test. So here we go. Tests are green. Always run tests first. Let's F5 our app. See what we get. Hey, look, I have URLs. And they work. Now, this isn't me. This isn't me. Our laptop's not connected to the internet. But you can notice it opened the browser. It's got the right address. We got it worked out. And we TDD'd our way into that code. So at this point, we can feel pretty good that we've accomplished what we want. Now, I'm being completely honest with you. There's some error condition checking that I should be doing. I should be checking to make sure it's a valid URL. I should probably run it against some regular expressions. And of course, I would want to write some tests for that. Write a test that confirms that the URL conforms to standard URL patterns. We might even want to go really crazy and actually do NS lookups and see if they're there. Who knows what we could do? We could then disable the button and all that other good stuff. But we would continue to TDD our way into that by using tests against those commands, by decoupling that logic out of our view and TDDing it all the way through. And then using the refactoring to clean that code up as we go. So I think we're good, Aaron. I think I can go back over here. And I guess I have to take you through it. You saw it. You were with me. You think
I was there, yeah. I think it looks great.
You sign off on the story?
As the product owner, we sign off.
You sign off on that?
All
right. I'm going to drag that over here, and we're going to call that done.
Great. So this is at this point where, again, if you attend Jamie's session tomorrow, if Peter was working on code that was checked in directly to TFS, as soon as he checks this in, it's going to automatically mark that task as done as well, and it's going to do that stuff for him. We're not going to show you that today.
Hey, look at that. I burned some down.
Idea. And good, you got us back on track. So I was worried about that. So we want to finish strong here. So all right, thank you, Peter. So after we're done executing and we do this, the final thing is that we've got to respond to change, right? And we've got to respond to the feedback that we're going to get from our customers. So what does that look like? This is sort of our final step in the process. What we do here is we're going to first mark all of those stories as done. We're going to review the acceptance criteria, make sure the product owner feels good about it, make sure the team has really delivered the value that they committed to. Those things fall off the backlog. And now we're going to get credit for that work in terms of velocity. So velocity is one of these sort of often misunderstood terms, but I think the easiest way to think about it is the notion of yesterday's weather. And there's this saying that the easiest way to predict what today's weather is going to be is to look at what yesterday's weather was, right? So this is a common term for velocity as well, in which you say, how much work are we going to complete in the next sprint? Well, the best probably predictor of that is to look at how much work you completed in the last sprint. And this allows you to create a visual like this, and again, we have charts for it in the product, that give your team an understanding of velocity. Once you know that, you can start to really get good at predicting how far your team's going to get through a release. So we're going to get credit for that in terms of velocity. And then after we deliver it to customers, we're going to get a bunch of feedback from that. And we're going to take that feedback. It's going to flow directly into our product backlog. And as the product owner, I'm going to reprioritize that. And we might actually find something new that came in based on the feedback that actually is higher priority than some of the other things that we had initially planned. And this is, again, that whole idea of responding to change that's really, really important. So we're going to do that. So I'm not going to show you any demo there stuff, but I just wanted to take us through that. That's how we end. Now, as we've kind of looked through that sort of life cycle, Peter and I want to leave you with a few takeaways that we think are really important. Peter talked about earlier that we're tools guys. Like here we are, we're talking about Agile, we're talking about individuals and interactions over processes and tools. But we're really, really more Agile guys than we are tool guys. So we love our tools. We just
happen to work on a tools team.
But we're people. And we love our teams and whatnot. And these 10 takeaways, I think, are things that don't relate to tools. They don't relate to software. They relate to your teams and how your teams act and react. So let's walk through these. The first is that the number one thing you've got to do in order to be successful is get serious about what done means. And when I say that, I don't mean get serious about done for your project. Don't get serious about done for your sprints. Don't get serious about done for your user stories or even your tasks. Get serious about done for all that stuff. How many times have you talked to somebody on your team, maybe it's you on your team, and you say, you know what, I'm done with that. I'm done with that task. And then the next day you walk up and you say, hey, what are you working on today, Peter? And he says, oh, I'm finishing up a few things on that task. You say, wait a second, I thought you were done, right? He's like, well, I was done. I wasn't done, right? And then and we start having a conversation about it's crazy, right? Get really, really serious about what done means. It's so good for morale, it's so good for your team, and it's so good for being able to predict how far you're going to get. So number one is start defining done and get serious about done.
So the second one we think of as fail fast. Fail fast, like done, is one of those things you want to apply all through the process cycle. You think about it when I was doing TDD, I want to fail quickly. In fact, it's important that I fail first, which seems kind of bizarre. Because we need to understand always where we are. So as a TDDer, I want to see a failing test before I start. But when we start to think about process, we start to think about tasks and stories and sprints, what's important is to, if you're going to fail early. It costs you less. And what does fail mean in this context? Well, it could mean that your burn down chart is ramping off crazy because you had some early discovery. Early on, you discovered that something isn't at all the way we thought it was going to be. It's going to cost us 10 times as much. Catch that as early as you possibly can and reset the sprint if need be. Reevaluate a story, retask that story. You always want to have all of those things happen as early as possible where they will cost you less and where you have more time and more opportunity to mitigate them.
The third item is understanding your team's velocity. And we talked about this a little bit about what velocity is. But one of the common things that I see teams run into is, first of all, they change the makeup of their team. So every sprint, you've got 3 guys working on the sprint today, tomorrow. In the next sprint, we plan for 4.5 guys. Now, first of all, there's no half a person, okay? So that doesn't make sense. And you're never going to have an idea of predictability and understanding how far you can get if you're sort of changing the makeup of the team, right? So it's really, really important that you get serious about this. Keep your teams together, help them or let them build a rhythm, help them learn what their velocity is, and now you'll start to be able to predict how far you're going to get through your release. If you don't understand your team's velocity, you're in a way sort of flying blind or you're driving blind, and it can become a real problem. So make sure that you understand your team's velocity.
And be sure you finish what you start. That sounds a lot like done, but in fact it's a little bit different. You always want to make sure that you start an activity, whether it's a task or a story or a sprint, and finish it before starting another one. We've often seen, in addition to the half-a-person problem, we also will often see this thing where we spread ourselves too thin. We peanut butter ourselves across the product backlog or across the task list. And we take on 10 or 12 things all at once, and they're all running in parallel like this, and we get to the end of the sprint and none of them are done. It's always much better from a business value perspective, a constant stream delivery of value, to start one, finish it, start another, finish it. I've found that sometimes our engineers resist this idea. They're not always very happy about this. They think it'd be more efficient to parallelize it. Until after a few sprints of parallelizing it, they realize we're not delivering at the end of those sprints. We're not finishing. Me, as the product owner, keeps saying, where's my stuff? Where's the beef? I want to have it done. I'd rather have you deliver me one good story every sprint than 5 stories half done.
Related to that is the notion that bugs are real work. And we have seen that in software, we've almost developed a bad habit. We treat bugs differently from new user stories, from features. We have 2 lists. We have our product backlog, where we keep all the value that we want to deliver, and then we have our bug backlog. What's a bug backlog, right? It's a problem. That's what it is. And it creates a problem for your teams. Bugs are problems in the software and problems in the working software that you've delivered. There are times when bugs are it's going to be more important to go work on bugs than it is to move on to the next feature that everybody wants. But you're going to have to make a hard decision there, and you're going to have to make sure that you're treating bugs appropriately. When I think of what happens in the real world when you don't pay your bills, right? You build up debt, and pretty soon, nobody wants to loan you money, and you got a problem on your hand. In the same way that we pay our bills, we've got to make sure that we're paying our bills in terms of bugs and treating bugs like real work. If we treat them differently, we're going to create problems for the team and really confuse the team. So make sure that you're treating bugs like real work, and don't let your projects that you're starting be foreclosed on because you've built up too much debt.
Unit tests, unit tests, unit tests, unit tests. I can't say enough about them. And it's not just because I work on the feature, okay? I read a study recently by National Institute of Standards and NIST, basically where they were saying that if we have, as we increase the investment we make in automated testing, and in particular in unit testing, we can save hundreds of billions of dollars annually in regressions and support. Errors and defects found early are orders of magnitude, 2 or 3 orders of magnitude less expensive to fix than when you find them late. And when you find them in production, it's way too late. Write unit tests. Get into the habit of it. You don't have to write them first. I'm a fan of that. But please write unit tests for everything you do.
Number 7 on our list here is one of my favorites, Autonomy, Mastery, and Purpose. How many of you read a book called Drive by Dan Pink? Anybody read that? I see a few hands. It is a fabulous book. And the subtitle of the book is Drive, the Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. And Dan Pink lays out 3 things. He says that when you give people autonomy, the ability to make decisions for themselves, to have that power to make decisions, when you give them mastery, the ability to get really, really good at something, to master a craft, and then you give them purpose, and you show them how what they're doing ties into the big picture. When you give them those 3 things, incredible things happen. Incredible value is delivered to customers. And I'm a big believer that if you give these 3 things to your teams, the same thing happens. You know, Agile is about self-managed teams. And there's different ways we can motivate our teams. In the book, Dan Pink's described that you can dangle a carrot in front of people, and you'll get some level of motivation out of that. You can beat them with a stick, right? And you'll get some level of motivation out of that. But the better way to motivate them is to give them autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And when you do that, amazing things will happen. So again, I'm just going to recommend the book. Go out and read it. I didn't write it. I just read it. But I think it's fabulous. And I think you'll find it really changes the way you think about your teams.
Do the right thing at the right time. It's important to understand that planning is a constant evolution, a constant running process, and that you are making the right decisions at the right time. There is a phrase in the Agile movement called the last responsible moment. And it's an interesting phrase. It really says that you really should defer decision-making until it becomes irresponsible. Now, irresponsible is different than saying until the last possible minute. That is beyond irresponsible, right? There comes a point in time when it's an appropriate time to make a decision. And if you think about TDD, it's actually got that in the really small. When's the right time to write that code? When I got a test that proves it's not there. Take that across the whole thing. Planning, prioritization, testing, coding. Make your decisions at the right time.
And related to that is the idea that planning is important. But I like to think of it as that I'm going to plan until it's time to learn. And I think that those things go hand in hand. The longer that you plan, sort of your return on investment starts to flatten out. Because your future planning, or the planning that you're continuing, is based on assumptions that you've made in earlier planning. I'm a believer that at some point you should stop and you should start learning, which means you've got to get started on the code. You've got to start executing. And because you're executing, you're going to learn. And it actually will likely change your plan. So I'm going to leave you with a couple quotes here. George Patton, who's one of our famous generals here in the United States, said, "A good plan executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week." So think about that. And then Dwight Eisenhower, who's equally as important to our country's history, said, "Plans are worthless, but the act of planning is everything." So hang on to that. Make sure you're planning. Agile guys plan. We do plan. I'll sit down and take out the coffee, and I'll make an argument that we actually do more planning than waterfall teams. But I think we plan until we need to learn, and then I think we react to that.
And the final one for us here today is that quality is not a variable. Time is a variable. Scope is a variable. The amount of resources you can put onto a project or a task or an activity is a variable. Do not allow quality to become a variable. Be passionate about high-quality code. All of this has to do with that. All of this comes back to being passionate about delivering the best customer value, writing the best code, writing the best function. Always deliver quality. Don't let that one slip. There's just no simpler way to say it than that. Okay, so believe it or not, we are wrapping up here. And before we go much further, I just want to say thank you all for staying. Aaron and I actually are pretty good about running a tight ship on a session, and we're coming up on still yellow, not red. So we do not have a lot of time left for questions. We promise we are going to spend much of the rest of the day down at the Visual Studio booth. So Aaron, we got some sessions here. You just hit click past ones.
Yes, we had some sessions yesterday, certainly on a lot of this stuff. So if you missed some of it, you want some more of those details, you can go watch those sessions online.
These are on video.
We've got some upcoming sessions later today that go into a bunch of the topics that we've covered in more detail. So certainly there's opportunities there as well. And finally, we've got the All Hands Lab, which is over in the booth. So if you want to go play with this stuff while you're here and pull one of us aside and ask some questions, go grab one of those hands-on labs as well. So with that, we'll say thank you very, very much.
Thank you.